Okay, guys, we're going to work on the worksheets that were posted for Chapter 6. Hopefully you've printed those out and you've taken a look at them. Your copy at the top says follow rounding directions, and each self-test, you'll see mine doesn't necessarily say that, but your copy that you download and look at says this at the top, and that's the only difference. So we're going to follow, instead of it being one direction for the whole set of worksheets, it's going to be for each individual self-test. So self-test 22 says to compute all answers correctly to one decimal place, and we're looking at Snowflake Hospital A, B, and C. So Snowflake has the following data for May for adults and children and newborn. They list the admissions, the discharges, and they've broken out the deaths over and under 48 hours. The first question A asks you to calculate the gross death rate, and you're going to see that on page 93, which I know was cut off in the book, so I'll scoot this over a little bit. There we go. Number of inpatient deaths, including newborns, in a period, multiplied by 100. And so we had, the deaths were broken out kind of funny because they did them under 48 hours and over 48 hours. So you could have added this way for one question and added this way for another question. So that's why you see all those numbers written out there. But in any event, for the total number of deaths for adults and children is 36. Newborn 5 multiplied by 100 over the total number of discharges, including adult and children and newborn deaths, and so that should be 751. The deaths are included in the discharges, so you did not need to add them back in. So your answer is 5.5%. And the net death rate is on page 96, and the net death rate is the total. Let's see if I can get that better. No, I'm just goofing it all up. Hang on, I shouldn't have touched it. There we go. Total number of inpatient deaths, including newborns, minus those deaths over 48 hours. So we've got that same number of deaths. So 36 plus 5 is 41. So you just see me that I've written the total here, minus the 7 deaths. I totaled that column, times 100. Everybody see that? And then 751, total number of discharges, including newborn deaths, minus for that period. Everybody remember to do that part? That's why I left it off. Then you should have 4.6%. C, newborn mortality rate. This one's pretty easy, so that is just another big fancy way to say newborn death rate, which I had so much trouble finding that in the chapter the other day, but it's right here. Total number of newborn deaths for the period over total newborn discharges. We had 5 newborn deaths. According to your table of information, you had to add these two together to make 5, and you have 60 discharges. Remember that this doesn't say live, so you're not adding that back in. So when your formula says including deaths, if you were to take, your fingers and cover that up and just see total number of newborn discharges for the period, total discharges. I know we're having a little bit of trouble still with live discharges and deaths, so that's why I'm taking a little extra time to point that out. All right, number 2, the following data are recorded for November, and you've been given a whole table of information by service, the number of admissions, deaths, and discharges. So again, we don't see live discharges, so we know these deaths are included in the discharges. So the gross death rate is the total number of deaths to discharges. So we've got 41 deaths because we've got the 2 columns again, under and over 48 hours. So there are 10 in this column, 31. When you add them together, it's a total of 41 deaths multiplied by 100 over the total number of discharges. When you add the discharge column together, you should have gotten 516 for 7.9% because we're still following one decimal place. The net death rate, you are taking the total number of deaths and subtracting those deaths under 48 hours over the total number of discharges minus the same deaths for 6.1%. So you can see here, as well as you could have seen up here, that the net death rate is definitely a better death rate for the hospital. It's a lower rate. Not a lot. I mean, you could say it's 8% versus 6%, so 2 percentage points does seem like a lot, but it does make a difference. Newborn death rate C, you're going to just pull out your newborn information. So we had 2 newborn deaths, right? One under, one over, multiplied by 100, over total newborn discharges. And remember, these aren't live, so we don't need to add back the deaths in, for 5.3%. Right, we're still in self-test 22, number 2, and you're asked for the net death rate for the medical service. And so, let me see if I can get that up here where you can see it. Yeah, that works. So the medical service has 25 total deaths minus 5 deaths under 48 hours, multiplied by 100, over 261 discharges, and you're going to subtract out those deaths under 48 hours for 7.8%. And then hopefully you went through and you did each clinical service with the lowest gross death rate, and it's psychology or psychiatric. All right, so number 3 says a newborn nursery reports the following data for February. Excuse me. And you're given the bassinet count, births, discharges, newborn deaths, fetal deaths, inpatient service days. So you're being given a lot of information, but all they want you to do is calculate the gross death rate for the newborn nursery. So let's take a look. You've got discharges. It doesn't say live, so we're not going to add back in the newborn deaths. But we see that there are 2 newborn deaths, so we need the total number of newborn deaths. Get to that formula, right? Total number of newborn deaths for a period multiplied by 100 over the total number of discharges, which is 84 for 2.4%. So Morris County reintroduces the live discharges and death concept. And again, like I've done before, you're going to see me kind of draw that bracket and remind myself that I have to add these 2 together to get the total number of discharges. So for the gross death rate for November, we're going to take the number of inpatient deaths, including newborns, for the period. So when you add up the columns under and over 48 hours, you're going to get a total of 19 deaths, which is reflected here. 19 times 100 over the total number of discharges. You've got 483 live, 19 death. So I've broken that out here for you to see that you have to add both of those together for the total for 3.8%. Your net death rate is the same total number of deaths, 19, minus those under 48 hours. So when you add that column together, it's 5. So 19 minus 5 times 100 over the total number of discharges, which when you add this together, it's 502. Subtract out that same 5 for 2.8%. Newborn mortality rate, remember, is just big and fancy for newborn death rate, and that newborn death rate asks for the total number of newborn deaths. So you add these 2 columns together, arrive at 3 multiplied by 100 over newborn discharges, total newborn discharges. So it's 95 live plus those 3 death, 3.1%. 4D, I ran out of room because I write so big. So 4D is the gross death rate for adults and children. So we're just going to pull out this particular row of information. So we're going to use 4 plus 12 because we need the total number of deaths, and they're broken out for us into over and under 48. So total of 16 multiplied by 100 over total number of discharges. So we've got 388 live plus the 16 death for 404, and we're going to have 4.0%. Number 5 is a word problem that asks a hospital newborn nursery reports a total of 234 births during the month of July. During the same month, there were a total of 4 deaths, 2 newborn and 2 fetal deaths. One of the newborn deaths occurred under 48 hours after admission, and the other occurred over 48 hours. During July, a total of 238 newborns were discharged, and the bassinet count for the month was 15. So you've got a lot of extra information in here that you didn't need. So one pitfall for students is when they see 4 deaths, they go, okay, there were 4 deaths. But this extra explanation, if you're only going to calculate the newborn death rate, you don't need those 2 fetal deaths. So you see that I've highlighted out of the 4, we're actually going to only choose 2 to calculate the newborn death. So we've got 2 newborn deaths multiplied by 100 over 238 for 0.8%. So if you used 4 deaths here on the top, that's incorrect. And hopefully you understand why, because we don't count the 2 fetal deaths. So my advice to you is when you're presented with a word problem, just make sure you're reading it all the way through and not jumping to any kind of conclusions without really taking the time to read through it. If that makes sense. Okie dokie. Let's see. I'm getting my paper straight before I mess something up. All right, so we've moved on to self-test 24, and self-test 24 asks you to compute the answers correctly to 2 decimal places, so there's a shift there. And you've got Chastity Hospital reports the following surgical data for the year. So you've got the number of admissions, discharges, deaths. Then you've got a breakdown of the deaths over to the side, under over 48, under over 10 days post-op, and anesthetic agents. You've got operations performed, patients operated on, and then anesthetics administered. And so they're asking you to calculate the anesthesia death rate. And the anesthesia death rate is on page 100 in your textbook if you're looking for it. So it's the total deaths caused by anesthetic agents multiplied by 100. So you've got 2 reported to anesthetic agents, 2 multiplied by 100 over the total number of anesthetics administered for 0.11%. We're going to go to postoperative death rate. All right, so postoperative death rate asks for the number of deaths within 10 days after surgery. So we've got 12 under 10 days post-op multiplied by 100 over total number of patients who were operated on for the period, 1852, for 0.65%. Your gross death rate for the year is deaths to discharges, and the deaths are included in the discharges in this table of information because it doesn't say live discharges. So we've got 40 total deaths multiplied by 100 over 1849 for 2.16%. The net death rate for surgical patients, we're going to use that same 40. We're going to subtract the 9 deaths under 48 hours that is written in our table and multiply that by 100. Our bottom number set up is the total number of discharges, 1849, minus those same 9 deaths. Remember, if you're following your formula, it reminds us to subtract those out for 1.68%. Alrighty, so I'm going to stop there and then we're going to pick back up with number 2.